I did an RP program for over a year, and here are my results, my experience, and some advice if you're considering doing one of their programs. So quick intro if you're new to this channel, my name's Yusuf and we help coaches and trainers build an online offer. I've also been working as a doctor for the last 3 years, and the hospital environment has not been kind to me. It's a very catabolic environment. It had me basically looking like Boris Johnson. And it's because you're contending with constant beeping alarms and elevated cortisol and circadian carnage and constant stress and 13-hour shifts and all that stuff. So surprisingly, it's not very good for your body composition. And I managed to achieve the impossible. I managed to lose muscle and gain fat at the same time. Oh wait, that's the wrong way around, isn't it? So I needed to recover some of the lost muscle, so I did a 1-year bodybuilding cycle. Now, I'm not a bodybuilder, but you'll always hear me say that everyone has bodybuilding goals, they just don't realize it. So everyone wants more muscle and less fat, but they often don't want to admit it to themselves because they don't see themselves posing on stage with little trunks and oiled up. In the words of the wise Ronald Coleman, the preponderance of humanity would like to be bodybuilders, yet many are unwilling to hoist the necessary loads.
Lightweight, baby.
But most people just kind of fart around the bush by doing things like training with kettlebells because they don't want to admit to themselves that they've got bodybuilding goals, really.
Squat. Oh, yes, please. Oh, yes, that's it. There we go. Oh. Kettlebell.
I also went through the fitness menopause after I herniated my L5-S1. You can see more about that here in terms of how I dealt with my chronic back pain. But I had to switch goals because I could no longer powerlift competitively. So the RP physique program fit the hole for me perfectly there. And I believe that if you want to hit any goal in your life, you have to blast and cruise. You have to have a period of time where you just go all in and use an overwhelming force to get out of the inertia and shake yourself loose of the homeostasis. So I did 1 year of proper muscle gain focus, followed by a 4-month fat loss phase with calisthenics focus in the training. So if you don't know who RP, Renaissance Periodization, are, they're a team of highly qualified doctors and sports scientists and coaches, and they're great guys actually. We had a chat with Nick Shaw and Mike Israetel on the podcast multiple times. Have a look at them, great episodes. They're pretty legit for hypertrophy training. They've got the definitive resources across their channels. And so I thought, okay, I'll outsource all of the decision making to them because I know as a coach, it's very easy to start meddling with your own programming when you're dealing with your own stuff. And so if you can just do something out the box and hand over the decision making, you tend to make better decisions. It was also a great perspective shift from a powerlifting background to make me do things that I otherwise wouldn't have done. Mike often does that to people.
Just working out, just having fun, you guys. Charlie!
The program started off as deceptively easy and then it really crept up on me, but it was a great lesson to focus on dropping the load, forgetting the kind of percentage-based programming, old habits that I had, and focus on thinking like a bodybuilder. The main differences from how I'm used to training were that there was a lot more movements in the program, and quite often you'd only do 2 sets of maybe 5 to 7 movements per workout, rather than what I would be used to is just coming in and doing endless sets of squat or bench. So I did the physique template. It's all semi-customizable, so I picked the movements that fit my preferences the most. And you can see here there's quite a wide variety of movements and stuff that often you would do 2 sets and move on to the next movement, onto the next one. And it was very much focusing on training a muscle group and hitting it from multiple angles, which is not a mindset that I'm used to. So who would this program be for? I would say anyone who's an intermediate or an advanced lifter who wants to outsource the decision making and also maybe shake you loose of old habits and learn something new. The main lessons that I picked up from doing this program is to think like a bodybuilder. It's okay to wear a bum bag once in a while. It's okay to use straps. It's okay to wear yellow trousers. You know, all of these things are part of the essential bodybuilder starter kit, and you've just got to embrace it. The second lesson was learning to get more out of less. And you'll often see that with advanced bodybuilders. If you look at Jeff Alberts or Kai Green, that they're trying to get the most out of the least weight or the fewest number of sets. Contrary to what you might think of that just as they progress in their career, just adding more and more volume. That's not always the case. They're focusing on trying to get as much stimulus and as much quality as possible. And this was a shift for me compared to powerlifting, where you're trying to just move the weight from A to B as legally as possible. So I really like Mike Israetel's 4-step mantra for improving the quality of each rep. So focus, stricter, slower, deeper. And if you can improve those 4 dimensions of any rep that you do in the gym, of course your results are going to improve. It was also quite psychologically liberating to let go of having to hit certain numbers each week in the gym, and instead focusing on quality of movement and pump and soreness and range of motion, and just really exploring the movements themselves. Bodybuilding can often seem quite boring from the outside, but I think there's a huge amount of depth and enjoyment that you can get from what looks like a very mechanical act. But in terms of diet, the main mistake I made was revenge bulking. So when I'm stressed and overrun with work, I tend to eat less rather than more. And some people have different coping mechanisms for how they default to eating. But quite often after a 13-hour shift, you'd end up just not having time to eat, or only eating very little in the evenings. So I actually lost quite a bit of weight, and I tried to revenge bulk by compressing my surplus into a shorter period, and obviously the results were ugly. You can't bully your body into gaining more muscle than is physiologically possible. So that was a real mistake. I just got sloppy. I tried to jimmy the process and it didn't work. Then when I did the fat loss phase, I really dialed in the diet, but I was too slow. And really, when you're planning out fat loss, you can afford to go with more aggressive with a deficit early on in your diet, as you've seen from this video. And then as you get leaner, you have to start walking the tightrope more and more. But I was too conservative. And this comes down to your preference for discomfort. Some people prefer long, slow burn. They don't mind being in a kind of mild deficit for a long time. Other people prefer short and sharp discomfort, just get the diet out of the way. And actually, I'm in that camp, and I should have been a bit more aggressive with the deficit so that I could just get through it quicker. The other thing I did during the diet was I focused on calisthenics style training, because I've got certain movement goals, and I don't think you need as much volume as people think to preserve muscle during a diet. So I thought this was a good time to focus on that stuff while still doing some maintenance lifting to preserve muscle. And I had the wonderful Kayo coaching me for flares during this time as well. You can see more about that here in the video called How to Learn Anything. So final lessons and insights is that you're always dealing with some kind of differential. So the obvious one is calories in and calories out. So you've got these 2 levers that you can pull at any time. You've also, in business, obviously, you've got revenue and you've got cost, and then the differential is the profit. Or also with your diet, you've got intake and you've got fullness. And so you've got all these different levers. So with our personal finance, we focus on trying to save more, but maybe the easier thing to do is to improve your earning potential. Sometimes we see one of those levers as immovable, and actually, if we challenge that assumption, we can really supercharge our progress. So with the fat loss diet, I found myself getting really hungry, even quite early on in the diet. And so the question was then, how can I make myself more full with the same calorie intake? And that's when you can start playing around with calorie density of your foods and food volume. I'd encourage you to play around with that idea of differentials and seeing maybe that lever is one that can be moved. Anyway, overall great experience. I would recommend the program to anyone who has resonated with what I've said there. And if you feel like yourself in a similar kind of training rut and you want to focus on hypertrophy for a bit, give it a go. I should say as well, this isn't a sponsored video or anything. I just quite like the guys at RP, and I thought you might get some value out of this video. I'm very happy to answer any questions in the comments as well. Just post below and I will get back to you. All right, speak to you soon.